Welcome to Exception Seekers, the show where we challenge conventional views on youth mental health and explore stories and experiences that offer alternative perspectives. I am joined today by Diana Clements, who is the founder and executive director of the Parry Sound Forest School. Diana, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
We've had the opportunity to speak a number of times over the years, and one of the things I love is how passionate you are about connecting kids with nature. And I wondered to start if you could share a bit about what inspired you to start the Parry Sound Forest School.
Well, the answer is actually two parts. And my answer changed over the course of founding this organization and then moving through it. So in the beginning, I was and I continued to be deeply troubled by the state of our natural environment. And I know that the next generation are going to be left to clean up the mess that our generation and the current generations are creating and have left behind. And I believe that children are not going to want to protect nature if they don't know it and love it. And so I wanted to create a place where the love of nature and land could be encouraged and fostered by other like-minded educators, and where children could be exposed to the same magical moments with frogs and birds and mud and bees that shaped who I am today. So that was why I first set it up. But secondly, as an educator, I saw that there were developmental needs in kids, both physical and cognitive, that couldn't be met in the classroom. And these are the things that were used to be met just as a matter of course in the everyday life and experiences of kids. You know, where I was allowed to go for a bike ride all day when I was 11, or I could just wander the streets and go to vacant lots and play, and just do things, just freely experience the world around me. That doesn't happen very much anymore. Things like challenging themselves physically, or roughhousing, or tree climbing, or getting a soaker in a pond. Those things just don't happen as a natural course of life for many children anymore. The forest school, I wanted to create a place where that kind of learning could happen.
And you're really like the Parry Sound Forest School, for people who, I mean, it's a big name in Parry Sound, but even if you're not in Parry Sound, I actually had a conversation on the weekend with someone who's a student at Queen's in their program, and they were saying, "Oh, well, you're from Parry Sound. You must know the Parry Sound Forest School."
Wow.
I know, it's pretty cool. So as an educational facility too, and the sort of like vehicle through which to teach, being nature, it has momentum behind it, it seems. I'd be curious, how do you see those two fields coming together, or their future together of environment and education?
I think I should start by saying that the forest school movement as a movement has been in North America for about 20 years.
Okay.
Parry Sound Forest School is only 5 years old, but forest schools in Canada have been around for about 15 years now. It's a movement that came from Europe, and I think has been happening there for a very long time. And there's some pretty amazing videos of the kinds of schools, the kind of activities that they do in forest schools, particularly in the Netherlands and that part of the world. And in a North American context, what we're calling forest school is actually what Indigenous children were raised with. It was simply a part of their childhoods, of their lives, was that you were on the land and you spent your time experimenting and experiencing the land and figuring out, challenging yourself and pushing your edges and constantly growing. Like humans in North America, I believe that we have co-evolved with the environment. There are plants like sweetgrass who are dependent upon humans to harvest it to make it grow better. And obviously humans have a lot of plants that we are dependent upon as well. So forest school is a new concept that has ancient roots. And that all of our ancestors at one point or another were doing as just a natural practice as part of childhood. For me, I got my degree in environmental studies at the University of Waterloo, and that taught me a lot about ecology and a lot about environmental issues and stakeholders and that kind of thing. And then getting the degree in teaching allowed me to hone my skills in order to be able to pass along the kind of learning that I learned in the environmental studies degree. And the two of them have been really well married together.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really learn anything about child development as such in Teachers College. That stuff has come along since, especially since I taught kindergarten for 10 years. Child development was really, really an important part of that. And my forest school training had a lot of emphasis and reading on child development as well.
I like your idea of, kind of new concept with ancient roots, but you have alluded to a little bit just the change of childhood. You riding a bike at 11 and exploring vacant lots and that changing now. And certainly we see that with more time on screens and more, smart device uses. And so it can seem like kids are spending more time indoors
Mhm.
or on screens. Even this started hearing about ed tech, the use of technology in classrooms a lot too. Um, how have you, from being in the classroom now with the forest school, how do you see this shift or think this shift is affecting their mental health?
I remember when I was, I guess, 15 years ago now or so, when I was teaching kindergarten and they first came out with iPads, and
Hmm.
everybody was like, whoa, these are so amazing. And instead of having kids manipulating things, they were pushing buttons. And I was concerned right off the hop, like that was not technology. My Rose, my partner, and I saw that as an awesome technology for documenting our children's learning, but not as a learning tool. We just didn't see that as an appropriate learning tool. When kids can't even hold a pencil yet, they shouldn't be pressing buttons. They should be having to hold a pencil. So, but that's just part of the same thing. I believe that one of the biggest problems with technology and I guess when I was a little girl, when I was a little girl, when we were bored and we didn't know what to do and we were being too rambunctious, our parents sent us out. Go
Hmm.
out, go out,
Yes.
go out. And
Yes.
you might today, you might, if you said to a parent, yeah, your kid's getting on your nerves, tell them to go out. You might actually see that as being a negative thing,
Mm.
but it's not a negative thing. Going out and having to figure out your own things and make your own entertainment and is actually a really, really good thing. I think one of the problems is that kids no longer get bored. And
Mm.
if you look into the research on it, our brains need a chance to get bored. Boredom fuels creativity and problem solving and resilience and patience and self-reflection and so many developmentally important thinking habits that our kids just don't have anymore. Like I remember driving from Ottawa to Toronto in the back seat with my brother with books and toys, and that was it. There was no devices, and I didn't let my own children have devices. And I remember staring out the window and just watching, the scenery go by, or listening to the ching, ching, ching of the
Yes.
windshield wiper in the rain. Um,
Hmm.
and while that stuff wasn't super stimulating, it's actually okay. Our brains don't need to be stimulated constantly. And I think that's one of the problems with the amount of screen time that kids have today. Part of the problem to me is a lack of chance for our brains to be bored.
Hmm.
Another difficulty with the amount of screen time kids have is that a sedentary lifestyle leads to obesity and other health problems like diabetes and fatty liver disease and so on. And we know that, um, and there's just increasing research supporting the fact that if you have these difficulties in childhood, it's very difficult to get rid of them as an adult. And those absolutely have mental health impacts.
Yes.
The more overweight you are, the harder it is to be active, and the more sedentary you become, and it becomes
Hmm.
you know, a self-perpetuating problem.
Hmm.
Um, in this discussion, I also really want to differentiate between screen time, like a TV, or screen time, which involves social media, because I
Hmm.
think there's a very, very big difference between the two. And a lot has been written by Jonathan Haidt and other mental health professionals just about the impacts of social media and their how they reduce how it in childhood, not just in childhood, in adults, in us, causes us to question our self-esteem and our identity. And if I struggle with that stuff, if I go online and go, whoa, I should have done it this way, I should have done it that, like my life is boring. Wow. If I'm comparing, if me as an adult, like closer to 60 than I am to 50 now, if I'm feeling that way, what does it do to a youth who hasn't even yet developed their sense of self?
Yes.
So yeah, I just think there's so many mental and physical health impacts to screen time.
So if we can bring kids out of their homes and with the opportunity to detach themselves, to take a break from screens, immerse in nature, kind of go back to those roots. What do you think are, if people are listening, they're like, well, but like what would they really be getting out of that? What do you see as the life lessons that you think like life, the lifelong lessons that children can learn from being outside and interacting with nature?
I think about parents who are like, well, I've devoted my, the last 10 years to getting my kid, to hockey tournaments or to whatever organized sport. And that in organized sport, you can learn a lot of really, really important skills. Absolutely. But there are still life lessons that can't be taught on a hockey rink or in a structured team kind of environment. So learning in the out of doors or spending time in the out of doors is a absolutely full sensory experience. Um, and it's unpredictable and potentially uncontrollable. And these things can be delightful and they can also be scary. But um, the concept of a child is on the edge of a pond. I'll bring this one up a bunch of times as we're talking because this is just a really good experience that I think almost every adult who's played outside has had.
Okay.
And that is, as a child, especially growing up near Georgian Bay, you can go on the rocks by the water. And if you step 1 centimeter further towards the water than you should, you're going to hit slippery rock and you're going to fall in.
Mhm.
And every one of us has done that. And in doing so, every one of us has learned that we can fall in, get a soaker, and be really uncomfortable and get out and be okay. And that is the kind of stuff that you can't learn inside.
Mhm.
You just the full sensory body experience of rolling over a log and having the log be rotten and your fingers go into it, or um, climbing a tree and falling out, or falling down and hanging onto the trunk and getting, oh, did you ever get slivers under your fingernails? Oh
Mhm.
my goodness.
I can feel it as you're
I
saying.
know,
Yep.
I know. And it was terrible, and you survived. And every time something like that happens, kids get more resilient than the time before.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
outdoors allow children to see the world as a place to be explored and discovered, and a place where they can take age-appropriate risks, like
Mhm.
climbing a tree, and not having a parent say, come on, keep going, go, go, go. Like I've been before, like at the salt docks or at Killbear Park, and parents are like pushing their kids to do that jump into the water. And it's not coming from them, it's coming from their parents. And their need to please their parents, their need to be seen as competent by their parent, whatever that need is. It's not the kids' needs that are being fulfilled when that kind of thing is happening. And and when a child is climbing a tree and they're choosing to go one branch further than they did last time, they are totally in control of their own bodies, their own experience, and the self-efficacy and the just sense of control that they develop and the sense of power that you can have every time you try something a little bit further or a little bit harder or a little bit longer. I just don't think you can get the same thing through structured sports, and definitely not through online gaming or things like that.
That sense of self and that sense of trust of self.
Mhm.
I'm like you're saying this, and I'm just remembering all these times of being out on canoe trips and there's an element of it's unpredictable, it's uncontrollable. You're maybe physically wet or tired or cold or uncomfortable, but you learn that be uncomfortable. You can be comfortable in the discomfort. You can manage it, right? And then you get through and then you put on those dry shoes and those are like that's like the greatest feeling in the world. It's there is a beautiful element of that of challenging yourself within your abilities. When you talk about some of these experiences or things, I wonder, is there a really powerful or standout moment you've witnessed, where you've just seen a real shift in how a child connected with nature or their peers?
I do have one that stands out, I think, because it was the very first year we did forest school. There was, and this was during a summer program, there was a mom who on day 3 came down the hill and she was talking to me and she had tears in her eyes. And she said, Diana, last night at supper time was the first time my child has sat still to eat dinner with us. It was the first time his sensory needs had been met to that extent that he could actually sit and enjoy a family meal, and just how profound that was for her.
Mm.
I don't have a lot of specific instances with specific kids because it's hard for me to know what's developmental and what's a result of the forest school. Like if I spent a day in a classroom and spent a day on the land with the kids, it would be much easier because I don't know them in their school environment as well.
Right.
But what I can say is even if I can't really think of a particular moment, um, I would like to speak to a general trend, and that is
Mm.
that we have many kids who attend our programs who struggle greatly in the regular classroom. We have kids who are considered flight risks on their behavior plans, or who are in need of constant supervision, but they excel when they get here. And I don't know if this is because most of what we do is child-led and inquiry-based, whether it's because the sensory experience is so different than being in the classroom, the lights, the noise, the people,
Absolutely.
the air, all that stuff.
Mhm.
Um, whether
Mm.
there's so much more physical space for kids to decompress. Like when they're feeling overwhelmed in the classroom, there's a boundary, like there's a door, there's a wall, there's a whatever that they have to get through to help them regain control of themselves. And
Yeah.
here, they can move 10, 15 meters away from us and not have anybody follow them and self-regulate. And I
Right.
just think that space is very, very supportive. It's not for everybody though. Like we have had some kids for whom um, this type of learning was too much. Um, we have had kids who, I can think of a child who is on the autism spectrum and his sensory understanding of temperature is different than ours. But he also has a difficult time wearing winter clothes. So
Mm.
his being here in the winter it wouldn't work because he wasn't comfortable with his clothes on. I mean, his heavy clothes, snow pants and stuff on,
Yes.
but he couldn't feel the cold the same way we do. So it was hazardous for him.
Right.
And we have had some kids who struggle with the lack of structure. Like we do, don't get me wrong, we do have a structure. We have a meeting circle. We have absolutely got some very clear behavior agreements that we all adhere to keep everybody safe. But for some kids, they need more structure than that. I just think as a classroom teacher, I know there was children who, despite my best intentions, they just constantly needed redirection. They were just constantly needing to move, constantly distracting their peers, constantly distracting themselves. And I just love the fact that one day a week they can come to a space where they can just be that way and it's okay.
I mean, it's so interesting how our brains work and how, unique we all are in what we need to learn and what we need to regulate and what we need to experience things. One of the things that I love about your program is that it gives that opportunity to young people, to kids, particularly from an education standpoint, who need a break or need a change from the regular classroom, which, fits for some needs and not for all needs. And so to have that opportunity to just be a different version of themselves, I think is so beautiful for that. I mean, I know you run a summer program, and so it's a different, they're out of school already, but particularly for those during the year, I know that can just be such a wonderful gift to have. And thinking of that too, school is free. Um, and so for parents, but your program is not. And so, but you are a not-for-profit. Um, so curious how you balance that fee-for-service program that, you ultimately need in order to keep
Mhm.
going. But also, I know you really value having a program that's accessible to people. Um, how have you learned to navigate that and balance those two things?
Well, one of our missions is to have forest school programming be available to all children, regardless of their family's financial situation. So let's see, we have a partnership with the Social Services Board where they will pay for after-school care, um, PD days, March break, and summer camp for qualifying families.
Okay.
There are a number of hoops we have to jump through in order to be able to do that. We're recognized by an organization called High Five as having a certain level of training for all our staff. So that the
Mhm.
DSAB helps hugely with that. Um, we have a work exchange program where if parents are interested, they can, for example, give us, I've had parents come and build a boardwalk or build a garden, or give us firewood in exchange for fees.
Mhm.
We also on our website have a sliding scale where parents can choose the amount that they can afford to pay.
Okay.
And then we just this week, we're going to be starting a partnership with an organization called the Small Change Fund. And Small Change Fund will have a, a concept called the For School Bursary. And the bursary is being used directly to offset costs for families who can't afford. And um, through the Small Change Fund, we'll now be able to issue tax receipts to people who make donations. So we're hoping that that will improve or increase the amount of donations that we get, and that all
Right.
of those will offset. Like, for example, our school programs, the programs where classroom teachers bring
Mm.
their kids, we charge $15 per day per kid for that program, and that in no way covers like our overhead or the cost of staff. So there's lots of programs that run at a loss, and we're hoping that the money that comes through the Small Change Fund will help to offset that cost.
Right.
So yeah, so far we're making it work, and we
Right.
just really need to get the word out there for families to know that those supports are available and that we want
Mhm.
everybody to be able to come.
Being a young person can be tough. Raising a young person can be tough. Whether it's school stress, family dynamics, or navigating challenging emotions, everyone needs the right support. That's where Sound Youth Counseling comes in. We specialize in helping children ages 4 and up through individual, parent, and family counseling tailored to meet each person's unique needs. From tackling tough issues at home or school to providing customized workshops and professional development for teachers and community leaders, we're here to make a difference. At Sound Youth Counseling, we believe young people deserve a safe, welcoming, and accepting space to grow and thrive, and every family deserves the tools to support them. If you're looking for support, visit soundyouthcounseling.ca and see how we can help. Sound Youth Counseling, empowering individuals, supporting families, and building stronger communities. So you environmental studies
Mhm.
started. Um, so I imagine a lifetime interest in being outside and the
Uh,
environment, um, and being involved with nature education for so many years. I'm curious how, your relationship with nature has evolved.
I have been interested in nature since I was as long as I can remember. Um, there's actually a story. I don't think it's true though, but I remember them telling a story about when I was 3. I My parents turned around and I was holding a Massasauga rattlesnake. I don't actually believe that story. I
It's
don't
a
think,
good story, though. I mean,
but I can 100% guarantee that as a 3-year-old, I would have been catching snakes.
right. Yes.
I, I was very, very fortunate. I grew up, um, in the suburbs of Ottawa, and our property backed onto to Greenbelt. Um, my first 18 years of life, I never ever lived in a place where I looked out, into somebody else's backyard. I always looked into a green space. And I just, I, I was fortunate. I belonged to an organization or a nature club called the McCowan Club. And we ran out of the basement of, it was called the Museum of Man then in Ottawa. I think it's called the Museum of Natural History now. And I was there every Saturday, uh, literally as long as I can remember as a child. And then I went from there to the Field Naturalist Club, and I just, I had, my father was an amateur geologist, so we spent a lot of time camping in the summer, and while he was looking for rocks, I was turning rocks over, looking for things under them. Um,
Right.
I as a person with lots of ADHD tendencies, I nature was constantly full of new discoveries and new experiences that helped me to focus and sustain my attention, and
Mm.
it's still doing that for me today. Um, so that was my childhood. When we had children at home, again, I we deliberately steered them. We didn't do hockey, but we deliberately steered them to activities that kept me out of doors on the weekend. Because I sure remember being inside the classroom, looking out, wishing I was there. So on the weekends, we had horses, and we had the kids outside, and we did a lot of camping. We spent a lot of our summers just camping. But of course, when I was raising my kids, you can't go for a hike in the woods and expect to see birds or anything like that with a group of kids. So, and that's okay, because all that mattered to me was that we were there together as a family. But now that my children have left home, um, and especially now that I've retired from the regular school board, I can now justify spending a lot of time on learning more about the environment and about nature because I take it back to my work. So in the last 4 years, my nature connection has grown considerably. I've been involved with an organization called Earth Tracks. Earth Tracks is led by a man named Alexis Burnett. He operates out of Grey Bruce County, and I've done three year-long apprenticeships with him. Two of them were on plants, excuse me, two of them were on animal tracks and sign, and then one was on plants. And I have absolutely, um, I don't even know how to explain. It's almost like the learning that I've experienced with Earth Tracks has been like putting on glasses. Like when I go outside, I don't look at the land the way I used to. I see things that other people don't see. I hear things that other people don't hear. It's just been amazing. And I really feel I'm just scratching the surface too, for what's
Mhm.
out there. And yeah, I'm just loving continuing to grow in my understanding of nature.
Mhm.
And I know that it also supports my own mental health because,
Yeah.
like all of us, I've had my own struggles too, and some difficult family experiences, and um, yeah, nature sustains me.
I admire how you have found this just soul-filling piece that
Mhm.
has kind of been a part of you, and you've also been able to then find a way to keep it as an integral part of you through work and life. Yeah.
Mhm. I'm really fortunate because my physical, you don't have to be a young person or a really young person to be able to still get out in nature.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I'm just really thankful for that.
So thinking of, I can imagine for kids, for a lot of kids, if we say, hey, we've got this thing to do outside, most kids I know are so into it. Like they love being outside. I think sometimes the hesitancy of outside is more parents, maybe not sure about safety, their own comfort being outside, um, not sure what to do, right? There's kind of like a number of things that have to align for our young people to get those outdoor experiences. And so for parents or educators who might be hesitant or unsure about embracing, getting that outdoor focused approach to learning or just outdoor experience, what what advice would you give them? Or what would be sort of your pitch on the importance of nature in a child's development?
I would say that spending time with nature um, for a parent with your children is one of the best things you can do to support their mental health as well as your relationship with them. Because you know how we were talking about swimming in Georgian Bay?
Mm-hmm.
I remember being a little girl and being in the lake and being cold and coming out and having a caregiver wrap a towel around you and rub your back, and you're like,
I do vividly, yes.
just how
Yes.
that made you, that connection that created with your parent or your caregiver. And I
Mhm.
remember doing that for my children. And again, those are sensory experiences that you can't get inside.
And yet, too, part of that, like, so simple. And I like that's such a simple need being met. I like that example because it feels accessible. And I also like the example because it wasn't necessarily caregiver in the water with their child, right?
No, it
Like,
doesn't have to be.
it doesn't have to be. It can be just being there and being a part of it in a different way.
Spending time in nature doesn't mean, you know, doesn't have to mean going out in black fly season or spending time in the deep jungles of wherever. It doesn't have to mean that. Um,
Right.
they repeated access to the same natural space over time um,
Mhm.
is all it takes, once a week,
Right.
just
Yes.
to have that as a routine in your life, as a routine in what you do as a family. There's one family on my street, and her kids are, I'm sure they're in their 20s now, or late teens anyway. Every night, her family goes for a walk. The single mom and her two kids go for a walk every night. And I mean, they're surrounded by nature as they go for a walk.
So when we're thinking of like, well, how do we, if someone's listening and they think, okay, I like this idea, but I don't even know how I would go about doing it, it could be sitting on your front step or and just listening to sounds or going for a walk down the street or to the neighborhood park. Or it doesn't have to be, we're lucky where we live and what we have access to. But it doesn't have to be into a bush or a big lake. It could be, yes,
It doesn't have to
anything
be a week-long canoe trip. It's just getting
outside.
outside, away from screens with each other. It's an opportunity for shared, focused moments of wonder and
Hmm.
challenge and excitement, all of which strengthen childhood mental health. And at the same time, they enhance adult health too.
So when you talk about children's mental health
Mhm.
and your experience with education, if you could inspire one shift in how we look at children's mental health and education together, or children's mental health in education, if there could be one, if you could go train all the educators and say this would be like one shift in perspective or shift in execution, um, what would it look like?
It's a really tough question because then I'm really not sure how to answer this one because so many of the struggles our kids face are a result of the struggles their parents are facing.
Mm.
Um, in the classroom, if kids come to school exhausted, it's often because they didn't have the support to get to bed on time. It's usually because, not always, because there are some kids who just struggle, but there
Mhm.
are many others who it's their parents' struggles who affect their health. Um, I guess I feel if I could make a change, that the recommendations that Jonathan Haidt makes in The Anxious Generation,
Mhm.
that social media be banned for kids under 16,
Mhm.
is a pretty amazing one. Um,
Mhm.
I also would encourage families to sign on to the Unplugged Canada pledge,
Okay.
so that there's a community of like-minded families that can be connected
Mhm.
to prevent their kids from feeling socially isolated.
Mhm.
Um, I'd also like to see our classroom teachers be more intentional with when they use screens at school. Um, I'm a supply teacher, and um, sometimes I go into schools where, uh, like even at lunchtime, there's a TV on. And I just feel like we spend all day telling the kids to stop talking and to focus on their work and to listen to the teacher. And then when we get to the situation where they should be talking, we have a TV turned on. Um, yeah, I struggle with that one. I feel
Mhm.
that classroom teachers need to be more intentional about when and why they use screens at school. A local school board who has banned, I think the teachers told me they've banned the use of devices, like any technology in classrooms until the age of grade 3.
Mhm.
I think that's pretty amazing.
It's incredible.
I think
Hmm.
you've heard of that too then.
Yes, and I don't know if it's a school board or the school
Oh, I don't know.
specifically, but yes, I have heard of that, and I have heard of noticeable changes in those classes from not having it,
Yeah.
which is
Um,
pretty cool.
and I don't want to sound like I'm anti-technology because I'm not, because, you know, I love that I can go out for a walk right now, and if a bird calls and I don't know it, I can pull out my phone and identify it. Like that, I'm absolutely not anti-technology. I think it's incredible what we can do with our devices and with our screens.
Hmm.
It's just really important that we do it at the right stage in life.
Hmm.
Um, I think it's super difficult as a parent to keep your kids safe online. Um, Even as a judicious parent, my kids, even though I mean, at our time, we didn't have phones, but when my children were teens, you know, we had the desktop computer set up with the screen facing into the living room. So we knew what the kids were on. Even then, my kids wandered into territory that was dangerous for them. And the number of conflicts that happened in our house over the use of technology, like, it was awful. It was like every evening you knew as bedtime approached, you knew that this
Right.
big struggle was going to happen.
Hmm.
And yeah, I really, really feel
Hmm.
for parents raising their kids right now because it is not an
Hmm.
easy time.
Diana, I want to ask you our sort of signature question here, because one of the goals of this podcast is being able to speak with people and hear these stories that can sort of shift perspectives and give us new ideas. And so, as someone who has forged their own path, I'd be curious, when did you first realize that you saw things differently than most of the world? What makes you an exception seeker? Because I think exception seekers are those people who see something different or see a different way, or there's a gap, or they take their own journey. And so I'm curious when you first started to realize maybe you saw things differently.
Well, I wouldn't describe myself as exceptional. I do think that I have always questioned the status quo. Even when I was a little girl, I wasn't interested in Barbie dolls or the other things that other girls my age were doing. I preferred toads and tree climbing.
Mhm.
As a teen, I had a lot of mental health struggles secondary to childhood trauma and spent a lot of time just trying to grow up and be a whole and healthy person. Um, and as a wife and mother and teacher, most of the things I did and do were based on what allowed me to be outside as much as I could, or were choices that put the needs of the planet ahead of my personal desires. Whether that's choosing to not travel or choosing to wear used clothing or buying stuff secondhand. Um, most of the decisions I make every day are based on what is best for the planet, because what's best for the planet is best for us too, ultimately.
Mhm.
When I started the forest school, I was concerned about the planet and believed that the only way to help kids want to protect it was to teach them to love it,
Mhm.
because you can't love something that you don't know. But slowly, my purpose has shifted. I used to think mainly that nature needs us in order for the planet to survive. But now I flip this paradigm and I now
Mhm.
focus on how much we, and in particular our children, need nature in order for us to survive and be healthy. um,
Mhm.
for us to be the healthiest physically and emotionally that we can be.
Well, it's a beautiful gift of experience that young people in our region have access to. I know there are other forest schools around too in other ways, but as a formal place to go and have that outdoor experience, um, it's I know there are many in this community certainly who would want me to say thank you for what you offer. So, and thank you for your time today. It was really nice chatting with you and hearing your perspectives.
Okay, well, thank you so much for all
Mhm.
you're doing too as well, and the difference you're making in our community, and for this opportunity to talk about this stuff that is deep in my heart, but I don't actually talk about very often. So thanks a lot, Colleen.
Thank you. What a great conversation with Diana from the Parry Sound Forest School. I hope you've taken as many ideas from it as I have. And thinking back, certainly the pieces that stand out for me are really the simplistic pieces. The idea of, can we help expose our kids to time outdoors, whether that's playing on the driveway, whether that's walking down the street, opening the windows, listening to the birds, just giving them that opportunity to immerse themselves in nature, immerse themselves in an environment outside of the house. And so I would love to hear how you find time to get outside with your kids. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to Exception Seekers. Tune in again as we continue to seek overlooked stories that offer new perspectives, disrupt limiting beliefs, and inspire transformative approaches to nurturing youth mental health.
This podcast was produced by North Star Networks, the guiding light for progressive media.